Wimbledon semifinals already. Boy, does it feel like this tournament has breezed by. And this year's semis certainly are night and day from what we saw the last time this tournament was held. In that edition, we saw every semifinalist over age 30 with Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, and RBA. You saw Bautista Agut then, 31, the youngest of the bunch, and here we are this year with a lineup consisting of 22-year-old Denis Shapovalov, 24-year-old Hurkacz, 25-year-old Matteo Berrettini, and surprise, surprise, that 34-year-old juggernaut in Novak Djokovic is right back into the semis with basically no problems at all. Oh, and poised to win a 6th Wimbledon and three-peat there while he's at it. But anyways, on to the matchups, of course. Up first is going to be Matteo Berrettini up against Hurkacz, fresh off of upsets against world number 2 Daniil Medvedev and Roger Federer. Just straight off the bat, I am going to try to make this concise as possible because I want to go to bed. But let's start with the favorite, Matteo Berrettini, having a great tournament. As many of us could have foreseen, he was my finalist from the beginning of the tournament after the draw dropped, and for the most part, he has lived up to those expectations. He has played fantastic. His last match against FAA was probably his weakest match of the whole tournament. He will have to play better than he did in his last match today. Was lucky to get away with some shaky moments in the third set against FAA, but in the end, experience carried him through, and from this point on, he's going to have to be much better. Not going to be able to afford the slip-ups he had in that match, but it'll do him some good that he's been in this spot before. Semifinals at the US Open. He handled the occasion pretty well on that night against Nadal on Ash. Played a pretty competitive match for the most part. This time, he's going to be the favorite, and you would think this is the biggest match of Matteo Berrettini's career, both of them probably at this point. A real opportunity to make it through to a maiden Grand Slam final. For Hurkacz, it'll help the way that he was able to manage his nerves against his idol, Roger Federer, on center court. There's not really many occasions bigger than that, and Hurkacz for sure got up for that match. He was flawless throughout, pretty much. Obviously, it just wasn't Roger's day on the other side of the net. That was clear as day, but we'll talk about that in another video. As far as what he was in control of, Hurkacz really just played as well as he possibly could. Served huge. Continued his success at net against Federer. That carried over from his success against Medvedev with the 69 net approaches in that match. And though I have never considered Hurkacz to be like a net player per se, he's really showed out with his hands this tournament. It's been key for him finishing points in his last 2 matches in particular. I'm just saying that because those were honestly the only 2 matches I caught from him this Wimbledon. It very well could have been a theme throughout his prior matches, but regardless, in the 2 biggest matches in his past 2 results, the net prowess was a pleasant surprise, and one that, of course, will always serve him well on this court at Wimbledon. As far as keys, of course, Berrettini, it all starts with the 1-2, with his big serve, both first and second, and his second serves are routinely over 100 to 110 miles per hour in that range, and he does it with a certain degree of safety. but that serve coupled with his massive forehand, it doesn't really matter what surface you put him on. That's what his game is going to be centered around. And it's going to be all about finishing points quick, in my opinion, for Berrettini. If he gets caught up in too many rallies, it's easier to key in on his significantly weaker backhand wing, which, will put more emphasis on him having to put in a high percentage relatively of first serves in just to avoid getting caught up in any of those rallies, finishing points quicker. On the flip side, Hurkacz is also a pretty aggressive-minded player. Not maybe to the extent of Berrettini, but he hits pretty flat off of both the wings, and certainly a lot of us probably did not see a run this deep coming, but you just knew with the way he plays that run of form after winning Miami of just playing really, really poorly and being in a slump wasn't going to continue here. But he has at least well surpassed my expectations, and if he's able to carry the form over from the last match and a half, Berrettini is going to have a lot of problems on his hands. He has returned terrifically in that span, that match and a half with the second half of the Medvedev match and then Federer. He returned both their serves, which are both really pinpoint accurate and difficult to read, but after not really getting a read on the Medvedev serve at all on the first day, Hurkacz really dug in pretty much on the Medvedev serve on the second day. Broke it, I believe, 3 times. And then Federer, who has one of the all-time great serves, and despite him not really having a great serving day at all, it was very poor by his standards. Hubie was just suffocating him. He was having no easy service games through a good portion of their quarterfinal match. And if Hurkacz can keep that up, we're going to have a real match on our hands. And I do think that's what's going to transpire here. I see 4 or 5 sets. It honestly could be really nervy considering the occasion and conditions being kind of tricky at Wimbledon this year with wind and a lot of rain. Albeit they're under a roof, but still. A lot of those intangibles could come into play with the occasion being so big for both of them and having such a big opportunity ahead of them. Ultimately, I am going with Berrettini in, I'll say 5. It's probably tougher than what I would have thought had you told me this matchup would be happening here, but that's what I'm going with. And then, of course, we have the second semi of the day with Djokovic and Shapovalov. Novak, the heavy favorite to win this tournament from day one, really, is looking to make his 7th Wimbledon final and put himself in position to notch 3 slams on the year, as well as a 6th Wimbledon title. I did say in the last video that I don't think Djokovic has played his best and needed his best all tournament long, and he certainly did not find his best against Marton Fucsovics. It was kind of a sloppy match by his standards, but again, he didn't need it. He knows just the right amount he should exert as far as energy, both physical and mental energy, and his play so far, though not at his best, has gotten it done. And this might be the first match where he actually needs his best. I do feel in his draw so far, this is probably the first match with someone that can legitimately put him in some challenging spots. I haven't felt that way with anyone Djokovic has played to this point, but it's really hard to be concerned about a guy who's been in this spot so many times. His level may not be at his best, but I mean, this guy always gets up for these big matches. You put him on a big stage and he's usually going to bring out his best. He is one of the better big match players in the sport, and with a golden opportunity out there pretty much to bag a 20th major here, I do expect him to be sharp. His young opponent, on the other hand, I do also honestly consider him a very good big match player, especially relative to his peers in his age group. It's been 4 or 5 years since Shapovalov burst onto the scene, and through all the inconsistency, for the most part, Denis has always loved the big stage. Just off the top of my head, there's obviously the Nadal win at Montreal in 2017. The first time I really heard of him, he beat Nick Kyrgios in Toronto the year before in 2016. He played Novak incredibly tough at ATP Cup in 2020 last year, and ATP Cup was probably some of the best form Djokovic showed last season. Obviously this year he stepped up to the plate when he faced Rafa in Rome as well. He's just always been able to bring his best tennis against the best opposition on the biggest stages. Hell, even this tournament against the guy that he looks up to in Andy Murray in front of a heavily pro-Murray crowd. He probably played his best match of this tournament and really just took the racket out of Murray's hands. And that aside, Denis has noticeably improved in the last year. I talked about that a little bit in my last video, but really ever since the end of 2019, early 2020, Denis has made some fantastic strides. His serve has become a much bigger weapon, his footwork has improved tremendously, and that's helped in him not being as patchy within matches or even week to week. And he certainly played the best tournament of his career to this point to make this semi-final. Well, we all know Denis Shapovalov, when he's on, is electric. And really ever since that Murray match, I felt that this is the guy that can actually make Novak work before the final. And I didn't really think there was going to be anyone who could do so, at least after the draw first came out. And him being able to manage the trap matches like Kachanov in the quarters and even RBA before that, it's just been very good signs for Denis. Hasn't allowed himself to have a letdown after a couple of landmark wins in a row, and that's going to have to continue through this match. If you're Djokovic, I expect him to be sharper than he's been throughout the tournament, but even if he's not, he's still gonna do his thing. He is not going to give up an inch, and he's never going to be rattled, which is why I think that a big key for Shapovalov is going to be not getting off to a slow start, because so many times in these big matches, especially in the last couple years, you've seen people get tight and Djokovic just jumps all over that, or start out tight. And there's statistically, I believe, nobody that's better, at least among the all-time greats, after taking the first set than Novak Djokovic. He's smothered many a next gen in the last couple of years. Hell, he's smothered even his fellow all-time greats in that same manner. You know what you're gonna get with Djokovic. He's not really prone to blinking mentally in these big matches. Balls are going to come back off the return and off the ground that shouldn't come back and don't come back from anybody else. He's going to be incredibly hard to break serve. Just all of the things that have made beating Djokovic best of 5 at really any major so difficult to do in the last decade. You say this for pretty much every Djokovic opponent if you want to have success. You obviously have to have a great serving day. Shapovalov has served tremendously all championships. That will have to continue, and honestly, you'll probably have to go even a level up. But, you know, just given Denis's track history in these big matches, I do trust that he's going to show up. He won't let nerves get the better of him. I very well could end up eating my words because he's never been on a stage really this big. But I am expecting him to put in a good showing. I really am tempted to say 5 sets for this one. I was trying to really talk myself into saying Djokovic in 5 for pretty much this whole video as I was making it. And I've kind of alternated between Djokovic in 4 and Djokovic in 5 all day. But right now, I'm feeling it's going to be Djokovic in a very tight 4. I expect Shapovalov to put in a good showing for himself. But, I mean, I don't need to explain myself. The Djokovic juggernaut, I expect it to keep going and roll its way into the finals. So there you have it. Those are my semi-final predictions. Thank you all for watching. Feel free to comment down below your predictions for these semi-final matches. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Of course, leave a like if you did, and subscribe if you're new or haven't already. Again, I appreciate y'all for watching, and I will see y'all in the next one.